In the heart of Los Angeles, where the streets buzzed with life and the air carried a mix of ambition and chaos, there lived a man who preferred solitude over the spotlight. Keanu Reeves, known to millions as an action hero, walked through his days quietly, almost blending into the background despite his fame. Unlike many celebrities who thrived on attention, Keanu found joy in simple things: long rides on his motorcycle, tinkering with engines, or sipping coffee at small cafes without drawing too much notice. He was not just another actor. He was someone who valued authenticity and connection more than anything else. Keanu's love for motorcycles wasn't something new. It had been part of him for years. To him, these machines weren't just vehicles. They represented freedom, adventure, and craftsmanship. Among all the bikes he owned, one stood out: a vintage Norton Commando that held a special place in his heart. This particular motorcycle wasn't something he'd bought ready-made. Instead, it was a labor of love, a project that spanned several years. Every nut, bolt, and curve of the bike bore the marks of his dedication. Late nights spent polishing chrome parts, weekends devoted to fine-tuning the engine, and countless hours researching its history made the Norton more than just a bike. It became a piece of art. What made this motorcycle even more meaningful was how it reflected Keanu's personality. Just like the Norton, which combined classic design with modern upgrades, Keanu himself embodied a unique blend of old-school charm and contemporary relevance. While fans admired him for his roles in movies like The Matrix and John Wick, those close to him knew that beneath the tough exterior lay a kind-hearted soul who cared deeply about people and things around him. And this kindness extended to his beloved Norton, which he treated almost like a trusted companion. On weekends, when he wasn't working, Keanu could often be found riding along scenic routes outside the city. The wind rushing past his face, the hum of the engine beneath him, it was during these moments that he felt most alive. Away from the pressures of Hollywood, he could simply be himself. Friends would sometimes joke that if Keanu ever disappeared, they'd probably find him somewhere on a highway, exploring roads less traveled. But little did anyone know, this quiet passion for motorcycles would soon lead to an unexpected turn of events. One might wonder why someone as famous as Keanu chose to live such a low-key lifestyle. Perhaps it was because he understood the fleeting nature of fame. Or maybe it was because he genuinely enjoyed being ordinary. Whatever the reason, his humility only added to his appeal. People admired him not just for his talent, but also for his groundedness. It was hard not to respect someone who seemed so content with living a simple life, especially in a world obsessed with luxury and excess. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when least expected. For Keanu, this curveball came in the form of strangers who didn't know him or his bike at all. Little did he realize that leaving his Norton parked outside a cafe one evening would set off a chain of events that would test both his patience and humanity. Yet, as always, Keanu approached everything with grace, proving once again that true strength lies not in anger but in forgiveness. On a warm Friday evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Keanu decided to take a break from his usual routine. He had spent most of the day working on a script at home, and the idea of grabbing a bite to eat at his favorite local cafe sounded perfect. The cafe was tucked away in a quiet corner of Los Angeles, far from the glitz of Hollywood but alive, with its own charm. It was the kind of place where baristas knew their regulars by name, and strangers exchanged polite smiles over steaming cups of coffee. Keanu pulled up to the cafe on his prized Norton Commando, its deep metallic green gleaming under the soft glow of the streetlights. As always, he parked it just outside, trusting that it would be safe. After all, this wasn't Beverly Hills or Malibu. It was a neighborhood where people went about their lives without much fuss. Dressed casually in faded jeans, a plain black t-shirt, and his signature leather jacket, Keanu walked inside, blending seamlessly with the crowd. No one gave him a second glance. He looked like any other customer enjoying a laid-back evening. The cafe buzzed with the comforting sounds of clinking dishes, murmured conversations, and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine. Keanu settled into a cozy corner table near the window. ordering a simple meal of grilled chicken and fries along with a cup of strong black coffee. From where he sat, he could see his motorcycle through the glass pane, standing proudly under the dim light of the street lamp. It was hard not to feel a twinge of pride every time he looked at it. The Norton wasn't just a bike, it was a reflection of years of effort, patience, and passion. As Keanu savored his dinner, the peaceful atmosphere outside began to shift. A distant rumble grew louder, cutting through the calm like an unwelcome intruder. Moments later, a group of bikers roared onto the scene, their motorcycles growling menacingly as they skidded to a stop right beside Keanu's Norton. There were 6 of them, clad in leather vests adorned with patches and insignias that marked them as part of a notorious gang. Their arrival was impossible to ignore. Their loud engines drowned out the gentle hum of conversation, and their presence instantly drew stares from everyone around. The leader of the group dismounted first, his towering frame exuding an air of authority. His eyes scanned the area, landing briefly on Keanu's Norton before narrowing with suspicion. To him, the vintage bike didn't look like it belonged to anyone in the cafe. It seemed too polished, too refined for such a modest setting. In his mind, it must have been left there deliberately, perhaps as some sort of challenge or insult from a rival gang. Without bothering to investigate further, he turned to his companions and muttered something under his breath. Whatever he said elicited smirks and nods from the others, who clearly shared his suspicions. Unaware of the brewing tension outside, Keanu continued eating, savoring the last bites of his meal. Passers-by glanced nervously at the gang, unsure of what might happen next. Some hurried away, eager to avoid trouble, while others lingered cautiously, watching the scene unfold. Inside the cafe, no one dared approach the bikers or question their intentions. For now, the Norton remained untouched, though its fate hung precariously in the balance. What started as a quiet evening was quickly spiraling into something far more unpredictable, and Keanu had no idea what awaited him when he stepped back outside. The leader of the biker gang, a burly man with a weathered face and arms covered in tattoos, approached Keanu's Norton Commando with a scowl. To him, the gleaming motorcycle was more than just an unfamiliar presence. It was a symbol of defiance, a deliberate provocation from someone he didn't know but already despised. His mind raced with assumptions. Was this bike left here by a rival gang? Was it a message meant to taunt them? The thought fueled his anger, clouding any rational judgment. He wasn't about to let what he perceived as disrespect go unanswered. Without hesitation, the leader motioned to his crew, signaling that action needed to be taken. "Teach him a lesson," he muttered under his breath, his voice low but laced with menace. His words were met with grunts of agreement from the others, who quickly dismounted their bikes and gathered around the Norton. They circled it like predators closing in on prey, their heavy boots scraping against the pavement. Each member of the gang seemed eager to prove their loyalty, feeding off the tension and adrenaline that now filled the air. The first blow came swiftly. One of the bikers pulled out a knife and slashed one of the tires with a swift, violent motion. The sharp hiss of escaping air broke the relative silence of the evening, drawing startled looks from the few people still lingering nearby. But no, one dared intervene, not when faced with 6 imposing figures radiating hostility. Emboldened by the lack of resistance, the gang grew bolder. Another biker grabbed a metal chain from his pocket and swung it at the Norton's headlight, shattering the glass into tiny shards that scattered across the ground like glitter. As the destruction continued, passers-by watched in horrified fascination. Some turned away, unwilling to witness the senseless vandalism, while others filmed the scene discreetly on their phones, hoping to capture evidence without putting themselves in harm's way. A young couple holding hands froze mid-step, unsure whether to flee or stay rooted to the spot. An elderly man sitting on a nearby bench shook his head in disapproval, muttering something about kids these days, before deciding it was best to leave. Even the cafe staff peeked through the windows, exchanging worried glances but making no move to stop the chaos unfolding outside. For the gang, the act of destroying the Norton became almost ceremonial, a twisted display of power and dominance. One member produced a spray can and began tagging the bike with crude symbols and insults, leaving streaks of bright red paint across its once pristine frame. Another kicked over the side mirror, snapping it clean off with a loud crack. Every action was deliberate, each moment dripping with contempt for whoever they believed had wronged them. Yet none of them stopped to consider the real owner of the bike, the person who had poured countless hours of love and care into restoring it to perfection. Inside the cafe, Keanu remained blissfully unaware of the mayhem happening just a few feet away. Oblivious to the fate of his cherished motorcycle, he sipped his coffee slowly, occasionally glancing out the window to admire the Norton under the soft glow of the street lamp. If he noticed anything unusual, it was only the distant rumble of engines and the occasional shadow moving past the glass, but nothing that raised alarm bells. After all, why would he suspect trouble? This was a place where he felt safe, surrounded by familiarity and routine. By the time the gang finished their assault, the Norton was unrecognizable. Its tires were flat, its bodywork dented and scratched, and its once shining surface marred by graffiti. The beautiful machine that had once embodied freedom and craftsmanship now lay in ruins, reduced to a pile of twisted metal and shattered dreams. Satisfied with their handiwork, the bikers mounted their own motorcycles and roared off into the night, leaving behind a trail of noise and destruction. As the sound of their engines faded into the distance, an eerie quiet settled over the area. The Norton stood alone, battered and broken, a stark reminder of how quickly things could spiral out of control. And though Keanu still sat peacefully inside the cafe, finishing the last sip of his coffee, the weight of what awaited him outside loomed closer with every passing second. When Keanu finally emerged from the cafe, his hands stuffed casually into the pockets of his leather jacket, he was greeted by a sight that stopped him dead in his tracks. For a moment, he simply stood there frozen, as if trying to process what his eyes were telling him. The Norton Commando, the bike he had poured so much time, effort, and love into, was now a shadow of its former self. Its once gleaming frame was covered in graffiti, its tires slashed, its mirrors broken, and its headlights shattered. It looked less like a motorcycle and more like a victim of some senseless act of rage. Keanu's initial reaction wasn't anger, it was disbelief. He blinked several times, hoping that maybe this was some kind of cruel trick or illusion. But, no matter how long he stared, the damage remained painfully real. His chest tightened as waves of sadness washed over him. This wasn't just about losing an expensive possession, it was about seeing something he cherished destroyed without reason. The Norton wasn't just a machine to him, it was a piece of his soul, a testament to his dedication and creativity. Now it lay in ruins, its story seemingly cut short. As he crouched down beside the bike, running his fingers lightly over the spray-painted insults scrawled across its body, Keanu felt a pang of frustration, not at the vandals themselves, but at the sheer pointlessness of it all. What could have possibly motivated someone to do this? Why would anyone target something so innocent, so personal? These questions swirled in his mind, but answers eluded him. All he knew for certain was that this random act of destruction had left a void he couldn't immediately fill. Word of the incident spread quickly among the cafe staff and bystanders who had witnessed the earlier commotion. One of the baristas approached Keanu cautiously, her voice soft with concern. "Sir, I saw what happened," she said hesitantly. "It was a group of bikers. They thought your bike belonged to someone else, maybe a rival gang." Her words hung in the air, offering both clarity and confusion. Keanu nodded slowly, absorbing the information without saying much. So, it hadn't been a targeted attack after all. It had been a case of mistaken identity. Somehow that realization made the situation even stranger. The barista went on to describe the gang in detail. Their loud motorcycles, their intimidating demeanor, and the way they had circled the Norton before beginning their assault. She also mentioned that a few people had filmed parts of the vandalism on their phones, which might help identify the culprits. Keanu listened intently, his expression calm despite the turmoil brewing inside him. There was no trace of anger in his eyes, only a quiet determination to make sense of what had happened. Realizing he needed to report the incident, Keanu pulled out his phone and dialed the police. As he explained the situation to the operator, he kept his tone measured and composed. He didn't raise his voice or demand immediate justice. He simply provided the facts, ensuring that the authorities had enough details to investigate further. By the time he hung up, a small crowd had gathered around him. Some offered condolences, others expressed outrage on his behalf, but Keanu thanked them politely and asked for space. He appreciated their support but preferred to handle the situation privately. While waiting for the police to arrive, Keanu took a step back and surveyed the scene one last time. Despite the devastation, he noticed something peculiar. None of the damage seemed permanent. Tires could be replaced, paint could be stripped away, and dents could be hammered out. The Norton might never look exactly the same again, but it could still be restored. And perhaps he thought that was symbolic of life itself. Things break, people make mistakes, and sometimes chaos reigns. But with patience and effort, healing is always possible. Still, as Keanu stood there under the dim streetlight, gazing at the wreckage of his beloved bike, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just an isolated event. It was a reminder of how easily misunderstandings can escalate, how quickly assumptions can lead to harm. Little did he know, this moment would soon spiral into something far bigger than he ever imagined, a story that would captivate not just those present, but people around the world. When the police arrived at the scene, Keanu greeted them with the same calm demeanor that had become his trademark. He recounted the details of what he knew: the vandalized motorcycle, the gang's reckless behavior, and the barista's account of their actions. The officers listened intently, jotting down notes as they examined the damage to the Norton. Despite the severity of the situation, Keanu made it clear that his priority wasn't revenge or retribution. "I just want to understand why this happened," he told them, his voice steady and measured. "And if there's a way to prevent something like this from happening again." The officers assured him they would do everything in their power to track down the culprits, but Keanu didn't leave things entirely in their hands. Later that night, after the police had finished documenting the scene, he posted a brief message on social media. In it, he shared a photo of the damaged Norton, alongside a caption that read, "Sometimes life throws unexpected challenges our way. My bike was destroyed tonight, but I'm choosing to focus on understanding and moving forward, not anger." It was a simple statement, devoid of drama or blame, yet it resonated deeply with his fans. Within hours, the post went viral. Fans flooded the comment section with messages of support, admiration for his grace under pressure, and outrage over the senseless act of vandalism. Hashtags like "I got justice for Keanu's bike" and "Respect Keanu" began trending worldwide, drawing attention not only to the incident itself, but also to Keanu's characteristic humility. People were struck by how someone so famous could remain so grounded, even in the face of such blatant disrespect. News outlets picked up the story, turning it into a global conversation about empathy, forgiveness, and accountability. As the days passed, the narrative took on a life of its own. Biker communities online started speculating about the identity of the gang responsible, using clues from witness accounts and videos shared by bystanders. Some members of these groups expressed shame and disappointment, emphasizing that most bikers valued respect and camaraderie rather than destruction. Others vowed to help Keanu however they could, offering donations to repair the Norton or even gifting him new motorcycles altogether. Strangers who had never met Keanu personally felt compelled to reach out, sending heartfelt letters and gifts as gestures of solidarity. Meanwhile, Keanu continued going about his daily routine as though nothing extraordinary had happened. He declined interviews and avoided fueling the growing media frenzy, preferring instead to let the story unfold naturally. Friends and colleagues who reached out to check on him were met with reassurances that he was fine. "It's just a bike," he told one close friend during a phone call. "Things can be fixed. What matters is how we treat each other when mistakes happen." But behind the scenes, Keanu wasn't idle. He worked closely with the police, providing any additional information they needed to identify the gang. When asked if he wanted charges pressed against them once they were found, he responded thoughtfully. "If holding them accountable helps them learn from this, then yes," he said. "But punishment isn't the goal here. I'd rather see growth. For them and for everyone involved." His response surprised many people, including law enforcement officials accustomed to victims seeking harsh penalties. Keanu's approach challenged conventional notions of justice, shifting the focus from retaliation to rehabilitation. This perspective resonated with countless individuals who followed the case, sparking discussions about whether society should prioritize punishment or second chances. For many, Keanu's reaction served as a powerful reminder that kindness and understanding often have a greater impact than anger and vengeance. As the investigation progressed, the biker gang remained unaware of the storm brewing around them. They had no idea that their impulsive actions had sparked an international outcry, or that the man whose bike they had destroyed was none other than Keanu Reeves, a figure beloved not just for his talent, but for his humanity. Their moment of reckoning was fast approaching, but when it came, it wouldn't unfold in the way anyone expected. Instead of escalating tensions, the situation would pave the way for an unlikely transformation, one driven not by hostility, but by compassion. The biker gang, unaware of the whirlwind they had ignited, carried on with their usual antics in the days following the vandalism. To them, the incident was just another night of asserting dominance, a fleeting act of rebellion that would soon fade into obscurity. They continued roaring through the streets, their loud engines and defiant attitudes drawing both fear and disdain from those around them. But this time their actions hadn't gone unnoticed. Law enforcement, armed with descriptions from witnesses and video footage captured by bystanders, began closing in. It didn't take long for the police to track down the gang. When officers arrived at their hideout, a dimly lit garage littered with tools, spare parts, and empty beer bottles, the bikers initially laughed off the accusations. "What are you talking about?" the leader sneered, his tone dripping with arrogance. "We didn't do anything wrong." His bravado quickly crumbled, however, when the officers showed him images of the vandalized Norton Commando alongside screenshots of Keanu's viral social media post. The room fell silent as realization dawned on their faces. Their victim wasn't some random rival gang member. It was Keanu Reeves, one of Hollywood's most respected figures. For a moment, disbelief mingled with panic. The leader stammered, trying to explain themselves. We thought it belonged to someone else," he muttered, his voice suddenly small and uncertain. "We didn't know who he was." It was a weak defense, but it carried an undeniable truth. They had acted out of misplaced anger and ignorance, not malice. As the gravity of the situation sank in, the gang members exchanged uneasy glances, each silently grappling with the consequences of their actions. The police hauled them in for questioning, and news of their arrest spread like wildfire. Reporters camped outside the station, eager to capture every detail of the unfolding drama. Social media exploded once again, with debates raging over whether the gang deserved forgiveness or punishment. Amid the chaos, Keanu remained quiet, letting the authorities handle the legalities while he focused on processing the situation privately. However, when the gang's leader reached out to him personally, through a heartfelt letter written from jail, Keanu decided to respond. In the letter, the leader apologized profusely, expressing deep remorse for what they had done. "I never meant to hurt anyone," he wrote. "We were stupid and reckless, and I can't tell you how sorry I am. Please let me make this right." Enclosed with the note was an offer to pay for the repairs to the Norton, along with a promise to change their ways. Reading the words, Keanu felt a mix of emotions. Sadness for the damage done, yes, but also hope for redemption. He knew people weren't defined by their worst moments. Everyone deserved a chance to grow. Keanu accepted the apology without hesitation. "Mistakes happen," he later told a close friend. "What matters is learning from them." He agreed to meet the gang members face to face once they were released, wanting to hear their side of the story and understand what had driven them to such behavior. The meeting took place in a neutral location, a quiet park where no cameras or reporters could intrude. For hours they talked openly, sharing stories and perspectives. Keanu listened patiently, offering advice and encouragement rather than judgment. By the end of the conversation, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The gang members, who had entered the meeting bracing for hostility, left feeling humbled and inspired. They vowed to turn their lives around, committing to use their skills and influence for good. In fact, they proposed organizing a charity, right in Keanu's honor, using their newfound platform to raise funds for underprivileged children. Touched by their sincerity, Keanu enthusiastically supported the idea, seeing it as an opportunity to transform negativity into something positive. This unexpected connection marked a turning point, not just for the gang but for Keanu as well. Through his grace and compassion, he had shown them that even in moments of conflict, humanity could prevail. And though the Norton would bear scars from its ordeal, the same could not be said for the hearts of those involved. What had started as an act of destruction had blossomed into a journey of healing, proving that sometimes the greatest victories come not from winning battles, but from building bridges. The charity ride organized by the reformed biker gang became more than just an event. It turned into a symbol of redemption and unity. Word spread quickly through social media, drawing attention not only from local communities but also from people around the world who had been following Keanu's story. What started as a small gesture of goodwill grew into something much larger, a gathering of hundreds of bikers all eager to support a cause inspired by forgiveness and second chances. The event was aptly named Ride for Change, reflecting the transformation that had taken place within the gang and their desire to give back to society. On the day of the ride, the streets buzzed with energy. Bikers from different walks of life arrived, their motorcycles gleaming under the morning sun. Some came in sleek sports bikes, others in rugged cruisers, but they shared one thing in common: a commitment to making a difference. Spectators lined the route, holding signs that read, "Forgiveness heals and second chances matter." It was clear that this wasn't just about raising money. It was about sending a message of hope and resilience. Keanu joined the ride, riding a borrowed motorcycle, since his Norton was still being restored. He wore his signature leather jacket, now adorned with a custom patch designed by the gang as a token of gratitude. The patch featured two hands shaking over a motorcycle wheel, surrounded by the words, "Unity through understanding." As he revved his engine alongside the gang members who had once destroyed his bike, there was a palpable sense of camaraderie. The air was filled with cheers and applause, not just for Keanu but for everyone involved, for choosing growth over grudges, kindness over anger. Before the ride began, Keanu addressed the crowd briefly, standing on a makeshift stage next to the gang's leader. Speaking without notes, he thanked everyone for coming and emphasized the importance of empathy and forgiveness. "We're all human," he said, his voice warm and sincere. "We make mistakes, we hurt each other sometimes, but what defines us is how we move forward. Today isn't about me or my bike. It's about showing that change is possible when we choose understanding over judgment." His words resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom nodded in agreement or wiped away tears. The gang leader followed Keanu's speech, his voice trembling as he spoke. "I'll never forget the lesson I learned from Mr. Reeves," he admitted. "He didn't have to forgive us, but he did. And because of that, we've decided to dedicate ourselves to helping others instead of causing harm." His honesty moved the crowd, earning him a round of applause that echoed down the street. As the riders set off, the rumble of engines created a symphony of solidarity. The route wound through neighborhoods, parks, and highways, with participants stopping at designated points to collect donations for underprivileged children. Local businesses pitched in too, offering food, water, and merchandise to raise additional funds. By the end of the day, the event had raised tens of thousands of dollars, enough to provide school supplies, clothing, and meals for countless families in need. But beyond the financial success, the true impact of the ride lay in its ability to inspire. People who had written off the gang as irredeemable troublemakers now saw them in a new light. News outlets covered the event extensively, highlighting the unlikely friendship between Keanu and the bikers, as well as the broader themes of forgiveness and community building. Teachers used the story in classrooms to teach students about accountability and compassion, while parents shared it with their kids as a real-life example of how kindness can transform lives. For Keanu, the experience reinforced his belief in the power of connection. He often reflected on how a single act of vandalism had led to such profound change, not just for the gang but for himself as well. It reminded him that even in moments of loss, there are opportunities for growth. And though the Norton would always carry visible reminders of that fateful night, those imperfections told a story far richer than perfection ever could, a story of resilience, grace, and the enduring spirit of humanity. By the time the sun set on the day of the ride, the streets were quieter, but the ripple effects of the event continued to spread. Lives had been touched, perspectives shifted, and bonds formed that would last long after the engines fell silent. For everyone involved, it was proof that even in the face of chaos, beauty can emerge, and that sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead to the most meaningful destinations. Months after the charity ride, Keanu stood in the middle of a bustling community center surrounded by laughter and chatter. The occasion was special. It marked the unveiling of his fully restored Norton Commando. But this wasn't just any ordinary gathering. It was a celebration of resilience, redemption, and the power of second chances. The event had been organized by the reformed biker gang, who had worked tirelessly alongside local mechanics to restore the vintage motorcycle to its former glory. For them, rebuilding the Norton became a metaphor for their own transformation, a process of piecing things back together with care and intention. As Keanu pulled off the white sheet covering the bike, revealing its gleaming frame under the bright afternoon sun, the crowd erupted into applause. The Norton looked stunning, its deep metallic green shining as if it had never been damaged. Yet upon closer inspection, subtle signs of its ordeal remained. A faint scratch here, a slightly uneven patch of paint there. These imperfections told the story of what the bike had endured. To Keanu, they weren't flaws to be ashamed of. They were reminders of the journey that had brought everyone closer together. The gang's leader stepped forward to speak, his voice thick with emotion. "When we first met Mr. Reeves, we thought he'd hate us," he admitted, glancing at Keanu with gratitude. "But instead, he showed us kindness when we least deserved it. Restoring this bike gave us a chance to prove, to ourselves and to the world, that we can do better." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces before continuing. "This Norton isn't just a motorcycle anymore. It's proof that no matter how broken something is, it can always be fixed, with patience, effort, and love." Keanu smiled warmly, shaking hands with each member of the gang as they presented him with the keys to the bike. The moment was filled with a quiet significance, a testament to how far they had all come since that chaotic night outside the cafe. What started as an act of destruction had blossomed into a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. These men, once known for their reckless behavior, now stood proudly beside Keanu, eager to show the positive changes they had made in their lives. The celebration extended beyond the unveiling. Inside the community center, tables were set up showcasing photos from the charity ride, along with letters from families who had benefited from the funds raised. Children ran around laughing, clutching new backpacks filled with school supplies, while parents expressed heartfelt thanks to the organizers. It was impossible not to feel the sense of unity in the room, a shared belief that even the smallest acts of kindness could create ripples of change. During the event, Keanu took a few moments to reflect privately. Standing near the Norton, he ran his fingers gently over its handlebars, remembering the hours he had spent restoring it years ago. Back then, it had been a solitary project, a way to connect with his passion for craftsmanship. Now it represented something much bigger, the connections between people, the strength found in vulnerability, and the beauty of forgiveness. He realized that while the Norton might have been his prized possession, its true value lay in the stories it carried and the lives it had touched along the way. As the day drew to a close, Keanu climbed onto the Norton for a short ride around the neighborhood, flanked by members of the gang on their own bikes. Watching them ride together, one couldn't help but marvel at how fate had intertwined their paths. From adversaries to allies, from chaos to camaraderie, their journey was a powerful reminder that humanity has the capacity to heal and rebuild, even in the most unexpected ways. By the time Keanu returned to the community center, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the scene. As he parked the Norton and dismounted, he felt a profound sense of peace. The bike might bear scars from its past, but those scars were now part of its legacy, a legacy of hope, perseverance, and renewal. And as Keanu looked around at the smiling faces of friends, family, and strangers alike, he knew one thing for certain. Life's greatest victories aren't about avoiding challenges. They're about finding meaning in the struggles and emerging stronger, together.